The first two questions here are connected, and it was a question that I was going to ask, and I didn't know if it was too controversial or if the Rav wanted to deal with this. But the first two questions we have here are on the same subject. So obviously you touched a nerve here, and that I'll read the questions. One is from Abraham from Los Angeles. And he says, there is a stereotype that Jewish boys tend to be mama boys. Does the Torah prefer us to be mama boys or papa boys? That's the first question. The second one is the one that I was thinking of, more or less. I'll read the question first. How did Yitzchak transform from a female soul into a male soul? And how can I go about doing this myself? Right? But, so that's Yitzchak is laughter, but it's just a mind-blowing thing. But I'm going to say it's not funny. It's a mind-blowing phenomenon that in the world today, even though it directly affects an extremely small percentage of the world's population, nonetheless, the idea of transgender, the whole transgender issue seems to have captured the cultural and political agenda around the world. It's mind-blowing. So obviously, when you mentioned that according to the Ari, that Yitzchak had a female soul, so obviously that arouses the question. So your guidance is very much needed to this issue, which, like I say, is like it's just not to be believed how it's like captured the agenda when it really appears to affect so few people.
That's what we meant, to arouse. Okay, so let's try to in short relate to these comments and questions. The Arizal says that Yitzchak was a feminine soul. What was he, a special feminine soul? Or just a feminine soul in general? So if we read the writings of the Arizal, we find that he was not just a feminine soul in general, but he was actually the reincarnation of Eve, the very first woman of mankind. So that already sounds something very, very interesting, that Isaac is Eve herself. Eve is called the mother of all life, Em Kol Chai. So that has to do with his mother affinity and principle, which we identified with his laughter also. As a male, to become a male, he had to assume or be given the soul of Eve's second son, who is Hevel, Ebel, Cain and Abel. Cain also, as Adam and Eve, had a good son and a bad son, just like Yitzchak and Rivka. And the bad son was really bad, and he killed the good son. And all souls come from one of these two origins, either from Cain or from Abel. There's a very important numerical relation between Eve and Abel and Hevel. Chava and Hevel. Chava equals 19, Hevel equals 37. 19 is the middle point of 37. Adam himself is closer, if we're talking about a mama's boy or a papa's boy. So Cain, the bad son, is closer to Adam. It says when you take the word Adam and you multiply the letters, instead of adding them together, they equal exactly Cain, 160. But she is the midpoint, the mother is the midpoint of Hevel. After Hevel was killed by Cain, so 130 years later, she gave birth to another son, Shet, who became the foundation of the world, who explicitly in the Torah says, in the place of evil. As though to say explicitly, if one doesn't know whether or not to believe in reincarnation, so this is the verse in the Torah that almost explicitly says reincarnation. Because it says that Shet was born in place of evil, of Hevel. All right. The Arizal then says that at the Akedah it says Hased Olam, and when at that moment that Abraham reveals to Isaac that you're the lamb to be slaughtered, to be sacrificed. Hased Olam b'ni. Those are the three words. The initial letters spell Hevel. At that moment he began to receive the soul of Hevel. Once more, if you have a feminine soul, you have to, someone was asking how to do it. It's not, the Torah says that doing it, there has to be some moment. Say another thing to make it even clearer. The Arizal says that whoever is born with a feminine soul, a male is born with a feminine soul, and in order to marry, obviously there's no other alternative. He has to try to identify with his body. And if he's born with a male's body, he has to become male. And he has to marry. The Arizal says that whoever is born as in a male body, but with a feminine soul, he will, at a certain point in his lifetime, be placed in great danger. Once when this is coming straight now from the Arizal, there will be some moment in his lifetime that he will be in such danger. Nowadays people talk about traumatic experience. There'll be something so traumatic in his lifetime that he will die at a certain level. That something in him will die. From tremendous trauma, he will experience a death experience. And at that moment that he experienced that death experience, that will be the moment that he will be reborn with a male element. It doesn't actually mean that his whole feminine affinity will be dissolved and annihilated. It just means that he will receive now a masculine attribute or affinity, ability to marry and to give birth. What other souls were mama boys? By the way, the person said mama boys or papa boys. The expression is either you're a mama boy or a daddy girl. So we have to we have to now. If we're already talking about mama boys, we have to talk about the daddy girls. Where to find a daddy girl in the Torah is not so simple, but in Hasidic tradition there are such. Maybe we'll mention in a moment. The other examples of mama boys that the Arizal says are three other great souls in the Bible. One is Shmuel HaNavi. That is these are souls that are referred to as sons of their mother and not sons of the father. Shmuel is referred to, Shmuel is such a great soul that he's like Moses and Aaron together, it says. And he is referred to in the Bible as son of, that God is giving Zerah, or as a seed, to Hannah, to his mother. Hannah then brought him, and he belonged to Hannah. His father didn't, he was just around his father Elkanah, but he didn't bother. Whatever his mother says, that's what goes as far as this kid is concerned. So he was totally belonged to his mother. Just he didn't grow up in the bosom of his mother, because his mother at the age of 2, when she weaned him, she gave him over to the temple service. Nonetheless, he's a mother son. The other, where did he, once more, the death experience that we mentioned a moment before of Isaac is the Akedah, the binding. Each of these people, there are a mother, boy, each one had an almost death experience. At a very early age, it says that Shmuel, when he was a boy, he said a halacha, a law, in the presence of his mentor, who was Eli Kohen, that shchita bizar kasher, that when you bring a sacrifice to the temple, it can be slaughtered. It doesn't have to be slaughtered by a Kohen, by a priest. After the slaughtering, all of the other services have to be performed by a priest. But the slaughtering itself can be performed by any Jew, not just a priest. This is a very, very special halacha, a law in the Torah. And he revealed this law, and he taught it as a boy. He was a very, very young boy, and he said this law, and he said it in the presence of his mentor, who was Eli Kohen, and it says that Eli Kohen wanted to kill him. Why? Because it says whoever teaches a law in the presence of his mentor is worthy to death. And at that moment, that Eli thought, and if had not the mother, he's a mother boy, had not the mother come and begged Eli not to kill Shmuel, he would have killed him, it says. He experienced that. This is all coming now, what we're saying now is coming from the Arizal. It means that he went through a death experience because he is a mama's boy. The next one is the prophet Jonah, the son of the Tzorfit, that he actually died. And the prophet Elijah brought him back to life, resurrected him from the dead. He's also referred to in the Bible as the son of his mother, the Tzorfit, not as the son of his father. The next one is another prophet, Habakkuk, that he also died as a child, and he was resurrected by Elisha, the disciple of Eliyahu Hanavi. And also he's referred to as the son of his mother, the Shunamit. Once more, the son of the Tzorfit, Haishar Tzorfit, is Jonah. Where did he have a death experience? That's obvious, the most obvious of all. He was thrown into the sea, and he was swallowed up by a fish. Jonah, right? We all remember who Jonah was. So, because he had two death experiences. First he died, and he was resurrected. And then he had another death experience. And it says that these three all come from the source of Isaac. Shmuel and Jonah and Habakkuk. Right, so again, as history proceeds, God makes things easier. So still there has to be some little traumatic thing in your life. if you happen to be a female in a male, but through overcoming that, dealing with that, one can merit as God wants. He wants you, this is like a trial in your life. He wants you to overcome your first nature and assume a second nature. Everybody has, even without being a female and a male, there's a concept that everyone is born with a first nature. And that's not his true essence. His true essence is when he assumes through work, through service, he assumes a second nature. That's why the term second nature, Teva Sheni, equals emet, truth. That's his true self. So everyone has this in a certain sense. A Teva, a first nature, and a second nature. The first nature is always called Tohu, chaos. The second nature is Tikkun, rectification. And the truth is Tikkun, the second nature. Right, so I hope that all of this, what we said, in some way answers and relates to the comments and questions.
Okay, we do have a lot of other questions here, but this question was just submitted from the audience here, is what about the opposite? A male soul in a female body.
Okay, so that's what we said. We're just about to say that. That's, if a mom is a boy, so there's a daddy's guru. A daddy's guru is this is a very, in a certain sense, it's even a more common phenomenon in our culture. That a guru is so connected to her father. First of all, I'm not using the terminology in psychology for these different states that everybody probably knows yourself. But again, these are things that are coming from the Torah. As we said, to find an example of a guru that's so connected to her father that she almost doesn't have to have a boyfriend, because who needs a boyfriend? She has her father. That's a phenomenon that exists, obviously. And as we said, it's not so simple to find an example in the Torah. What we may first maybe we'll say the example from Hasidic tradition. Dina says that she was her mother's daughter. Kimabita. The first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, the Baratanya, had two daughters like this. One daughter is the famous Devorah Leah, the mother of the Tzemach Tzedek, who was so connected to her father that she actually sacrificed her life. She gave her, literally, she gave up her life to save her father. And she just asked that her father raise her son, which is the Tzemach Tzedek. So such total devotion to sacrifice one's life for the father, a girl, that's one. The other is that he had another daughter. Her name was Freda. And she didn't sacrifice her life, but she was so devoted to her father, and she was a very, very wise girl and woman, that much of the deepest teachings of Chassidut, the father gave over to her, even more than to his successor, who was the son. There are many discourses of Chassidut that he taught her. There are other examples of great sages teaching their daughters, like the Or HaChaim taught his daughters, but it says that the Or HaChaim didn't have sons. But this is a case of teaching your daughter in the place where you have a son, and not just you have a son who's going to become your successor. That's why of all of the progeny of all the children of the Alter Rebbe, there's only one child that also miraculously, it's a whole story by itself, merited to be buried next to her father, which is usually a wife is buried next to the husband. But the only one that's buried next to the Alter Rebbe is his daughter, Freda, the one that he gave over all of his wisdom to. So these are two examples. Both of them were buried in a place which is not their native place. You can go visit it now today also, Hadich it's called. So here we have two examples of girls that were totally devoted to their father. Before we mentioned converts, every convert also goes through a total metamorphosis. She's like a newborn soul. In the Torah and in tradition, we find, we'll say perhaps, that the majority of converts to the Jewish people are women. Even though there are examples of great, very, very great converts that are male, just as we said before that Rabbi Akiva, the son of a convert, and Reb Meir, and actually we're at Zug, Shmai, Vavtan, that both of them themselves were converts, not just son of converts. And Onkelos, that we mentioned as a convert. And then there was a very, very famous convert in the time of the Baal Shem Tov called Avraham ben Avraham, who gave up his life, literally. So there were and there are great male converts. Nonetheless, the majority, or the very secret of conversion, is female. King Solomon thought that by marrying 1,000 wives, he would convert the whole world. Because every wife was a princess, and the princess is the essence of her culture. By marrying all these princesses, he would convert all culture and all peoples. He just did it too quick, or did it not 100%, not according to the Torah. According to the Torah, as being a king, he's not allowed to marry more than 8 different wives. And if he would have learned from Isaac, he would have known that the best is one. Nonetheless, once more, the majority of conversion has to do with women. Every woman who desires to convert to Judaism, in a certain sense, is a male soul in a female body. Why? When the Rebbe was asked, what is the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew? So he said that a Jew is essentially, whether male or female, a Jew is essentially a mashpia, a giver, which means male. And a non-Jew is essentially a receiver, which is female. So in order for any non-Jew to want to become Jewish, it's like a female wanting to become male. Meaning that there was a male element in that woman from the very beginning. And that's what motivated her to convert. What happened? What about a female with a female that's born a Jew, a Jewess, with a male element? So obviously she wants to become maybe a great Torah scholar. Bevakasha, that's why we have schools now for girls. It's also part of Hasidic tradition that there were girls that were greater scholars than the greatest rabbis of their communities. So there's nothing wrong with that. That if a girl wants to become a great Torah scholar, a great tzadekes, b'vakasha. So once more, the whole concept of conversion, in a certain sense, is a male soul in a female body. There are 13 great female converts that will now, it's a topic for a class by itself.
Okay, before we go on, just from trying to absorb what you're saying, it seems that in the world in general, and maybe modern psychology, the emphasis seems to be on Teva Rishon, whereas Torah is emphasizing Teva Sheni.
Right, second nature.
Okay, we're going to switch gears here. This is from Yisrael, somewhere on the East Coast. How can we cause ourselves to laugh, especially if that is difficult for us? And why is laughter the best medicine?
One way to laugh is if you see someone, especially a great person, laughing, you also laugh together with him. There's a nice picture of the previous Rebbe of Chabad with a big, big laugh. So if you hang that on your wall, that might be a good way to laugh. Or if you see other people laughing, that's why Hasidim would bring it together. Would sit together and laugh together, because if somebody else laughs, you also laugh.
We have a little bit time left, but we're slowly running out of time here. So we just want to apologize to anyone who did submit questions and we didn't get to them. This is also switching gears again. This is from Moshe in Miami. Is Netzach the consciousness of victory? You said already. Netzach is the consciousness of victory over death. How does one attain this consciousness?
Okay, very simply, we believe that the soul is eternal. So if a person identifies very, very strongly with his soul, before we said that you have to identify also with your body, that if you were born male or female, you have to know that that's what God wants you to be. But in order to experience eternal life, one has to identify with his soul. Because the soul is eternal. That's very simple.
Okay, another question. I'm not exactly sure how it fits in, but it's a great question. This is from Brooklyn. How did two yuds come to represent Shem Hashem in some Sidurim, as ER is spelled with two yuds?
Grammatically, ER is spelled with one yud, but sometimes it's spelled called Tav Malay with two yuds. When it's spelled with one yud, ER, it stands for the initial letters of a phrase, Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am God who heals you. For which reason this month of ER is a month of healing. If it's spelled with two yuds, then it represents the initial, it's called the chariot, the workings of the chariot, which in souls are Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Rachel. Because in the Torah, David was the fourth leg of the chariot is not yet born, and the initial Malchut level, which is the fourth level, is Rachel, and then ER stands for those four. Now, the fact that there are two Yuds there stand for the two patriarchs that begin with the Yud, which is Yitzchak, Yaakov, the father and the son. That is not the simple reason that Hashem's name is abbreviated as two Yuds. The simple reason is because when you intertwine the two names of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Adnut, the way it's written and the way it's pronounced, the way it's read is Adnut, Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, and the way it's written is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And if you intertwine those two, as you'll see in many Sidurim, so the first letter is a Yud and the last letter is a Yud, because Shem Havaya begins with a Yud and Shem Adnut ends with a Yud. So when they're intertwined, the beginning and the end is a Yud. And that's why it's considered to be a shortened form of the kavanah of God's name.
Okay, we're just going to...
Just another, in Hasidic tradition, it said that a Yud is a Yid, a Jew, a soul. If you have two Yidin, two Yuds equal, we said that a man and a wife equal are Isaac and Rebecca. If there are two Jews together that were equal, then God's presence appears. If one is above the other, that's called, it's like a colon. A colon is the symbol that's used for the end of a verse, for the end. Geendigt. If one Jew is above another Jew, or one soul is above another Jew, then it's all over. But if two Jews are equal to one another, then Hashem's presence dwells.
Okay, we're just going to have two more questions. As we always take questions here from those who are here in Yerushalayim. And that's the first hand I saw.
I really appreciate, first of all, Rav speaking to us also, and I really enjoyed the shir. I wanted to say that when the Chacham sits next to the Rasha, you spoke about the good influence, which is accentuating the positive. But what about Oy Rasha, Oy Shmeino, that someone who sits next to a Rasha is also negatively influenced?
Okay, that's a good question.
Okay, so I always repeat the question, so make sure everyone heard. The Rav in the beginning spoke about how at the Pesach Seder the wise son is placed next to the not so good son in order to influence him. And the question is, well, what about the opposite? What about the influence that the not so good son will have on the wise son?
So that's a good question. The answer is that you have to be a chosid. That the wise son has to be a chosid. Because if you're a chosid, you're immune to bad influence because you're now in a state of shlichus. There's a principle in the Gemara that says that if a substance is taking out, is extracting, it will not what's the word? Absorb. It will not, if you're extracting, you will not absorb. It means that you have to have a mentality of you now have shlichut. This is your, once more, I love this bad guy so much. I now am devoted to him. If I'm not devoted, I'm just sitting there without a sense of shlichut, which means a mission. If I don't have a mission, which is a Hasidic mission, so I might be influenced by him. But if you're there with a true sense of mission, the good guy will influence the bad guy. That's what it depends on.
Do you have some sort of power behind you?
If you're a chosid, then you have a power behind you, which is the Rebbe who sent you, or you're a Rosh Hadiach.
In this case, it's the father, I guess.
Okay, right.
I believe it was said about the Rebbe when, in the beginning, when he was sending out people on shlichut. So obviously people were being sent to communities very far away from other Jewish centers, and there was obvious worry about their own children. And the Rebbe said, if you take care of my children, I'll guarantee to take care of your children. So it's the same idea. Yeah. The last question is submitted. How can a woman affect the rectification of Eve in her psyche? So we talked about that before. What is the blade of the turning sword in the psyche? And how can she overcome it to re-enter the Garden of Eden and reach the tree of life?
That's a hard one. That's
Holy laughter.
We'll begin with the sword that's turning over, that's preventing us from entering. It's not just preventing the women from entering, it's preventing everybody from entering the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life. So we have to overcome that sword. Lahat ha'cherav hamitapech is the term. There are many interpretations of what that means. One interpretation is that it means a sense or a state of doubt in the soul. If something is turning over and over, it means that you're also undergoing a psychological or a spiritual turning over and over, that you're not 100% sure about yourself, about your ability, about your mission, even about your faith. So long as a person in the psyche he's turning over and over, and he's not clear and he's not definite. It says, Hashem is certain. Habadai Shmo Kenti Lato, that's the term. His name is certain. The arch enemy of the Jewish people is Amalek, who equals Safek, as the Baal Shem Tov taught. Doubt, a skeptic. What prevents us from the Geulah now, as the Rebbe would say, Mashiach now, is everybody has this little point of skepticism, of negative skepticism. Is Mashiach really here? Is he really going to come? Is the world ready for it? You go out to the street, you read a paper. Can Mashiach really come right now, this moment? That's the sword which prevents us from entering the Garden of Eden. Not just male, and not just female, but male as well. That's one part. I didn't get the other part of the question.
I don't have
So,
Okay. Before we end, we'll just end with a bracha. It's always good to end with a bracha. Between now and when we meet again in a month, this is really one of the most busy times of the year. This week is Pesach Sheni. So we should have a bracha. We all need another chance. We all deserve another chance. We all have to take advantage of the second chances that we are being given. And then Motzi Shabbos is Lag BaOmer, where the fire of the inner dimensions of the Torah are burning bright. We should have the bracha of connecting to the inner dimensions of the Torah.
let me mention one thing about it. We said that Isaac, we talked about Isaac, he's called the element of fire. So when we see the bonfire of Rashbi, on Lag BaOmer, Amir Hashem, I think that this is an Isaac phenomenon. And it says that in this world, people are afraid of fire, but Isaac has fear for Hashem. But people are afraid of fear, and especially fire. So they run away, people run away from fire. So that's why it says that in this world, in this time, the element of fire cannot lead the Jewish people. Leadership has to do with the different things about this month that we spoke about in the beginning. But one of the phenomena of the redemption and the Mashiach is that the leadership will be fire. And it says about Chassidut itself that the revealed dimension of the Torah is like water. People are drawn to water. If you're thirsty, you go to water. But in this, like the mentality of this world, the fire, people run away from fire. And Chassidus appears to be fire. That's why you have to take the inner fire of the Torah and touch it to the face of every person. You have to bring it to him because he's not going to be attracted to it. You have to show him that it doesn't burn. Not only doesn't it burn, but it's the very best experience. It's the most blissful and best experience that's imaginable. So that's also bringing the fire of Yitzchak, which is this is an expression in Kabbalah, that the fire of Yitzchak is the leadership of the future. Just like in the desert, Hashem led us with a pillar of fire. So that pillar of fire is what we experience this coming Motzei Shabbat. Motzei Shabbat, in any event, we take a Borei Morei Ha'esh, an Abuka, but this time it's going to be a big Yitzchak experience.
You know, we can say is, what is the source of that fire, of the bonfire, is that when Rabbi Akiva is being tortured to death with burning combs, he was able to transform that into V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha. He was able to take that fire and transform it in such a radical way that his students, especially Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, received that fire. And on the day that Rabbi Shimon dies, it says the whole house filled with light, so much that his students were afraid, because there was so much light there. But we're receiving it in a sweet way. So this Lag BaOmer, we should take the sweet fire of Torah and spread it to the whole world. But we're not done. Yom Yerushalayim, 50 years. What a bracha. What an unbelievable bracha that we're here. I'm speaking to people in Yerushalayim, but every Jew is connected to Yerushalayim. And then, maybe the greatest fire of them all is Shavuos. The whole mountain was a Shan Kulo. It was full of fire and the love of Torah. So we should all merit to all of these different levels, and until we see you next time.
Amen. Amen.